right, guys. So here's going to be kind of a very fun historical story. I guess it wasn't fun for all his wives, but the story of the wives of Henry VIII. So last kind of time we talked about the Protestant Reformation. We had talked about Henry VIII, obviously, as part of the Anglican Church. We talked about Lutheranism, Calvinism, and I said I'd come back to Henry. So Henry, of course, is known for two things. One, the reform of the Catholic Church, and two, his many wives. There's quite a few of them. You may want to almost make a chart as we go through this. And in the chart, you're basically going to do something like so, where you're going to have the name of the wife. You want to know the name of the wife. You could do the child they have, any children they have together. And then I want you to know the fate of each wife as well, right? And so you just kind of do 1, 2, there's going to be 6 of them, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's kind of a good way to kind of keep all this straight. So the wife, the child, the fate, right? If you know all that, you're going to be okay. All right, so let's go through them. I got a lot of pictures of these guys and the story, and we'll talk about it as we go through them. So wife number 1, we already know, right? It's Katherine of Aragon, right? So wife number 1 is Katherine of Aragon. We told this story last time. And so what do you need to know about her? Well, obviously, first wife, and they have a child. They have a child, Mary, the daughter. And of course, we also know that that ended up in a divorce, right? That because Henry was upset, he said, God is punishing me because Catherine was married to my brother at one point. I'm getting a divorce. And he's going to end up marrying his next wife. So that's the basic story of Katherine of Aragon. We already kind of talked about it, so we don't need to go into a lot of detail on this again. And again, all this is in the early 1500s. Notice you didn't have to know all the dates of all this stuff. Just remember Henry VIII himself ruled from like 1509 to 1547 or 1508 to 1547, whatever it was. All right. So here we go. So that's Catherine. She was followed by Anne Boleyn. Now, Anne Boleyn, she was what we call the lady in waiting, and lady in waiting basically means she was the assistant to the queen. So she was the assistant to Catherine of Aragon, and Henry knew her. He fell for her. He really liked her, and he's going to marry her as soon as he gets a divorce from Catherine. He marries her, and he has another child, another daughter, right? Excuse me. And this time a daughter named Elizabeth. And so he has this daughter named Elizabeth. And again, woe is me, woe is me. I don't have my son. I don't have my son. Anne Boleyn is only giving me a daughter. Again, they try again. There are miscarriages, and she doesn't produce him an heir, a boy heir. And so this time, Henry can't go, oh, I was married to my wife's brother and all that, bobbity bobbity boop. So what he says is, Anne is cheating on me. That Anne has had affairs. He even accuses her of having an affair with her own brother, which is not true. But he accuses her of all these things. And once he accuses her of all that, then he can get rid of her by beheading her. Now, beheading people back then was pretty nasty. This is before the guillotine, so you behead somebody with a sword or an axe on a block, and it was pretty bad. Apparently, they used a sword on Anne. So Anne dies, right? She's going to be beheaded as a result of this. So that's her fate. So again, if you're doing that chart, Anne Boleyn is the wife, the child is Elizabeth, and beheaded is the fate. All right? Or put an angry face because she was beheaded. All right, next, Jane Seymour. So Jane Seymour, she is going to be Henry's third wife, and sure enough, they try to have a child, and they do. And they have a child, and they have a boy. Yay, they have a boy named Edward Seymour. He finally has his boy. He's happy. All is good, except for a problem. And what is the problem? Well, Edward was born a little bit premature. The pregnancy was very difficult. And shortly afterwards, Jane died. So Jane, she's going to die. Let's make a little sad face because Jane dies. So she dies. Apparently, of all his wives, she was the one who Henry truly loved the most. So she dies, but he does have a son. So you go, isn't that it? That's what he wanted. Well, let me show you some pictures here because these pictures help to get us to the next part of the story. So this is just, again, Henry VIII. We think we should use this image before. So you have Henry. This is the kid. So this is an order. This is Mary Tudor. Again, we're going to do another lecture just on these children, which is going to tie in with the Reformation a little bit. So this is Mary Tudor. They're all Tudors. That's the oldest. This is Elizabeth. And this is, right over here, you see Edward. And I want you to look at the picture of Edward carefully, because what you should notice when you look at Edward is he's a little scrawny looking. Look at his face, very pale, got little chicken legs there. He's not very healthy. And this was a concern to many people in the court during the time of Henry VIII. There were people who went to Edward and told Henry and said, hey, you know, your son Edward, he just may not make it. You know, and that's a concern, you know, and at this point, you know, you may want to go and find another wife and have another child. Now, what ends up this happening is Henry's a little hesitant at first, says, nah, I really don't want to do this, and it's not worth it. I'm done, you know, I've had 3 wives, I have my son. And his advisors tell him, you don't have to do a thing, Henry. We'll go around Europe and we will find you the perfect wife. And they scour Europe and they, you know, they bring him back portraits of all these beautiful women. And then he sees this portrait of this one woman from a very prominent family, a woman named Anne of Cleves. And he sees this portrait of Anne of Cleves and goes, wow, she is beautiful. I really like her. I'll marry her. And so he agrees to marry Anne of Cleves. Now, they actually get married in this kind of paper marriage before they even meet. And it's all politically arranged, remember, and all of that. And so they have this marriage. And then they meet. Now, guys, maybe some of you have been on some of those dating sites, and you know how sometimes the profile picture doesn't exactly look like the person when you actually meet them? Anne of Cleves. So apparently when Henry finally meets her, it's like, you don't look like a profile picture. That's not Anne of Cleves. That's not the picture I saw. And he's like, this is not what I expected. And he gets very disillusioned. He also says she can't speak a word of English. I think she was from Germany area. And he complained she smelled badly. So he never even consummated the marriage, and he's simply going to get a divorce. So that's the story of Anne of Cleves. That I guess you know, Henry didn't exactly get what he thought from those from that portrait that he saw. So it's a funny little story there. All right, but at that point he's got some momentum, and Henry's like, well, let's try again. So so again, no children with Anne of Cleves. Wife number 5, Katherine Howard. So Katherine Howard, her deal, apparently she was very young. She was only 19 years old when she marries Henry. Henry is this point is like, oh, smitten with this young woman, and he's like, all right, I'll marry her. And unfortunately for Katherine, she did kind of flirt with a lot of guys. Was a little bit too outgoing personality for Henry. And this upset Henry, and of course accused her of having affairs. She may actually have had some, and this leads to her being beheaded. So that's her fate, and no children either. Also, you got to remember, by now, Henry's getting kind of old. You know, there's old Henry and young Henry. Young Henry was pretty good condition, healthy. Old Henry, not so much. Saw in that portrait of his. He's not exactly the most healthy dude, so that could be part of why he's not having children at this point either. So anyway, so Katherine Howard, she's going to be short-lived, and she's going to be beheaded. And Henry's like, all right, now what? Well, he goes and meets wife number 6. And wife number 6 is this woman named Katherine Parr. And he marries Katherine Parr. And as I said, by now, Henry, he's not doing too well himself. He has no children with Katherine either. And Katherine Parr does the amazing. Katherine Parr, we say, survived. She outlived Henry. So a big smiley face for Katherine Parr. She outlived him. And so all the other wives, they die, and Katherine Parr survived. So those are the wives of Henry VIII. If you ever want to remember what happens to them, let me show you something I promise you. Here, I promise you'll never forget their fates. So if you ever want to remember, it's very easy. Divorced, beheaded, dies. Divorced, beheaded, survived. These are the wives of Henry VIII. Right? It's a little rhyme people came up with way before me. Divorced, beheaded, dies. Divorced, beheaded, survived. I put up a little funny video as well. You could watch it after you listen to this lecture. Just a couple minutes. It's great. You'll get a laugh out of it. So anyways, those are the wives. So now, do you need to know all the wives? You actually don't. First three you need to know. Why do I want you to know the first three and their names? Because they have children, and they have the little Tudors, as we call them. And so this next lecture, and actually the last lecture we're going to do in the semester, is the story of the children of Henry VIII, the little Tudors. And that's where we're going to kind of tie in a little bit with the Reformation. It's a very important lecture, so obviously you're going to want to make sure you watch it. It's the last bit. You have a few more IDs that we still haven't covered on the little Tudors, and so we're going to cover all of that. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that little quick lecture on the wives of Henry VIII. Watch the little video. Enjoy. All right, thank you.